Good evening and welcome to the work session. And tonight leading our pledge will be Board Member Mr. Corey Young. Thank you, Mr. Young. Welcome, everybody. Okay, a moment of silence tomorrow night, Ms. Okay, questions, discussions, anything about the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I'll take the opportunity to point out that we'll start at 4:30 tomorrow instead of 5:30 because that's high on my list of trying to get here for 4:30, but we've got graduation following, so it's important.
We'll probably get a reminder from Ms. Michaels before we leave today also. So thank you, Mr. Holliday. Yeah, we start a group of graduations of get to witness these proud moments along with parents and grandparents and other siblings and relatives. So it'll be a fun week and a fun weekend. So, okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Questions, discussion. Mr. Odom, I do want to say that I'm impressed with the non-faculty list.
I'll work it on next year.
I think,
Heck, it's moving along.
Chairman Hodge, is that the largest that you've ever seen? I did too. Kudos to Mr. Tackett. We'll move on. Number 6 tomorrow night if we have any visitors. Number 7.
Number 7 be a couple of recognitions, and that will be tomorrow night also. Jenna Stitzel, surprised her when she went to the state meeting. She was announced as the winner of the Tennessee Coordinator of the Year for the Mid-Cumberland region. This is at Coordinated School Health. So she won that. And then another surprise, Kim Snell won locally for the Hometown Hero Award from the Child Advocacy Center. So we had 2 people that were awarded within, since we've met before, received 2 notable awards.
I was Ms. Stitzel. I would have found some place on those tracks to put my name, you know. So as many as she's
True.
Gotten grants for, so that's been very impressive. I think you mentioned a dollar figure that
She's at 900-something thousand, I think. Now we got some on the agenda tonight in her grants. Oh, has she now gone past the
passed the
million?
1 million mark.
Oh my,
That is way off the scale impressive.
it is.
So we'll get to give her our thanks tomorrow night. Number 8.
Number 8, presentation on anti-bullying reporting, training, resources, and curriculum. Board member Mr. Corey Young asked us to tell what we do for training our employees, what are some of the steps and things in process. So I think Ms. Paula Barnes is going to do the presentation for us tonight.
Board members, I asked for Ms. Barnes to do this tonight since we may be running close with getting to the graduation tomorrow evening. So, Ms. Barnes, thank you.
Thank you very much. So when this request came to us, we pulled together a number of our central office, we pulled together, I'm
The
sorry,
green light on.
it's on.
Okay.
We pulled together a number of our central office staff that work with this particular topic and met and really did a large brainstorming session to make sure we didn't miss anything, and we wanted to give you a full report. Ms. McLeod, Mr. Evans, Mr. Zago, Karen Metter, and Tommy Barrett, our 2 school services personnel that work with counselors, Josh Kubley, our Safe Schools manager, We also solicited input from all of our schools about different things they were doing within their buildings through their Character Ed Counts program. So I just wanted to let you know that this was a joint effort to put all of this information together. You got my clicker. Our guiding principle for Rutherford County is believing that the key to preventing violence is a school climate that fosters healthy beliefs, feelings, attitudes, and communication. And so that's what drives all of our decisions to make those steps within our schools reasonable and to meet the efforts that we need for our students. The first thing to know is the true definition of bullying, and this is in our policy 6.304, that bullying and intimidation are defined as either physically harming a student or damaging his or her property or knowingly placing the student in a reasonable fear of such or creating a hostile educational environment. So the first thing that we do when an allegation comes forth in a school, it is the school administration's responsibility or their designee, which often includes the SRO perhaps or a school counselor, to determine if the elements of that complaint rise to the level of a true bullying event per policy description. And that's what our schools have been trained to do, and we'll talk more of that in just a bit. So as for reporting, each school provides one or more methods for students to report a bullying incident. We have 2 or 3 schools that have developed a 24/7 hotline, an anonymous report via phone or email. Most of our schools still use a paper pencil reporting process or a verbal notification to an adult in authority, and then the administration or school counselor, again designee, investigates the report to determine the level of the complaint, which is followed by parent notification after that investigation. Our district protocol, of course, is to make sure that we follow policy 6.304, which is the student discrimination, bullying, and intimidation steps that are outlined in that policy. And then, if it is a true bullying report, the school is required to send that report to Ms. McLeod, our staff attorney, within 24 hours of confirmation. Those are what she keeps on file. And as you see, the next step, the state protocol, that summary must be reported to the state in the month of June each year. The information is also included in the state report card. Just for your information, in 2014-15, we had 44 cases reported of bullying, and this year to date, and this was last week, we had 31 cases reported so far. So you can see the number of, I'm going to call them true bullying cases, is greatly diminished after the investigation takes place and they determine if the elements are really there to support that definition. Next discussion we have was training for employees, and we do a multitude of different types of trainings in our school system for employees. We have an annual professional ethics training for all of our employees that includes all of the policies that are relevant to any bullying, intimidation, or discrimination issues. We brought in the Anti-Defamation League, who did a training on cultural diversity and bullying, trained our supervisors, our administrators, and our safe school teams, which every school has, who then take that information back to the schools, to the teachers and the staff. We do the Jason Foundation Suicide Prevention Training annually, which is geared towards adverse effects of bullying and how students should handle that and what to do, signs to look for. Our annual school counselor training includes sessions on bullying, cultural diversity, discrimination, and then best practices and sessions for new counselors to help them as they step into our schools and into this role. We have workplace violence training for all of our employees because this not only impacts students but employees as well. We have Section 504 training on disability harassment and bullying, and this is provided to our 504 liaisons at each school, then filters down to the school employees from that person. As I said earlier, each school has a Safe Schools team that's identified at the beginning of each school year, and there's training for that team on school climate surveys, best practices, and interventions that they might put into their school based on the needs of that particular student population and age group. We also have STARS, which is a state-provided training sessions on best practices and legal and ethical bullying laws. Very important to us is core essentials, character education training. That is in all of our schools, and again, that Safe Schools team makes decisions on how to set up their reporting factors, what trainings, what events to host at their school. So we try to leave it as a school decision on the best practices that they want to implement within each building. Our school counselors also have PLC sessions twice a year where they all come together at elementary, middle school, and high school levels to have discussions about these topics. There is an annual professional development conference each July that we host, and there are sessions for teachers on interventions and strategies. The SCALI conference is the School Counselor and Administrative Leadership Institute is annual, and all of our counselors attend that and bring back that information. I'll talk more about this next one, but the SROs are implementing a phone and internet safety program next school year in all of our middle schools. So they hosted a very brief training for our middle school administrators last week, and they'll be bringing that back to the middle schools this summer for implementation with their students and their parents. And then we're also training our substitute teachers through our contracted vendor on these same policies that we provide to our employees. Training for students. The first thing they see every year is that student handbook and code of behavior and discipline that includes these same policies we've been discussing. Teachers read that information to them and make sure they understand the nature of the policies and our procedures. In our wellness and life skills classes, many of these topics are covered. Again, the core essentials character education programs that are hosted at the schools. We have classroom and small group sessions typically conducted by our school counselors based on individual student needs. We have 6th grade and 9th grade transition programs. So as those 6th graders, or I should have said 5th grade, I apologize, 5th grade going into 6th grade and 8th graders going into 9th grade, explaining to the students what we need to do, how to handle situations, who to report to. Our school resource officer classroom programs. There's a program called Red Kids, and it's an empowerment safety education program. Again, the phone and internet safety program that's coming. Texting and cyberbullying has also been offered by our SROs. Several schools have bullying awareness events during certain months of the year, social media awareness, bullying prevention, and notification. We have multiple resources for parents and students on our Rutherford County website. This is under our student services link. These are some examples. I didn't list them all, but we have dealing with and reporting bullying, so it's there for parents. They can access that very easily to know how to report, who to report to. Cyberbullying prevention starts earlier than you think. Suicide prevention, keeping kids safe online, helping children cope with trauma, Safe Schools overview and definition, and during our parent academies that we've had in the past, we have offered sessions on bullying interventions for parents at that time. We also have implemented through our I'm going to call it SACS, Mr. Odom, help me.
Advanced Ed.
Advanced Ed, thank you. Our advisor-advisee program that went into place this year. So in the schools that are implementing this program on a full-blown nature, those advisors and advisees meet together to talk about issues so the students have someone to speak to directly. They have a mentor there that can assist them. Students have direct contact with school administration, school counselors, system social workers, system-wide school counselors, and other trained personnel. We also have the SAT teams, which is our student assistant team in all of our buildings, and that team works together with the parent and a child to develop interventions for personal safety plans if that is something that is deemed appropriate. And of course, we're going to begin the parent training on the phone and internet safety in all of our middle schools in the fall. I've listed all of the programs that are available to our school counselors. These have come over the course of several years, and many of them are appropriate for one grade level and maybe not so much for other grade levels. I won't read those to you, but you can see that Core Essentials Character Ed is at the top of the list, and again, that allows the Safe Schools teams within each building to make decisions and set programs and plan events and strategies that work best for their school. The school resource officers, again, the RAD Kids is a program that they present in the classrooms at their schools, and again, the phone and internet safety program, because we think that's going to be very beneficial for our parents. The last piece is the curriculum, because we pulled this straight from the curriculum guide that our school counselors are required to cover. And again, I won't read all these topics, but you can see by scrolling down through there, all of these are strategies for children to identify, to effectively deal with situations, to explain how to differentiate between situations, resolution skills. John, we'll go to the next one. Recognizing the effects of abuse in any form or fashion, demonstrating ways of dealing with peer pressure, describing consequences of bullying and harassment, and again, multiple curriculum goals that are listed for our counselors that must be covered. So we have identification, we have reporting, we have student training, teacher training or staff training, parent training, and then curriculum that is laid out for us by the state.
Pretty impressive program.
We do a lot. We really do a lot. And I think when we sat down and brainstormed and thought about all the things that are in place, and this is just a sprinkling of some of the events and the strategies and practices, the schools really do a good job when they sit down with their teams and talk about the grade level of the child, the age of the child, what's appropriate, how to get the message out, how to report, because one way of reporting is good for one age group, another level for a different age group. But the most important thing is that investigation piece, that they identify what's the complaint, what's the allegation, and does it rise to that level, and then what do we need to do? And again, Ms. McLeod stands in as a reference to them and a resource when they have questions. In kindergarten. And again, it's just made age appropriate. At the school level, they make that determination of what types of information to deliver. Angel?
This is very appropriate because the last couple of mornings, there's an entertainer in Nashville that has gone on one of the television stations, and I believe their children are in Murray County, and they've spoke of, having contact with their system about some bullying with their child. So this, again, very appropriate that we had this tonight because it's making the Nashville news.
It is an ongoing issue. We know that. We recognize that, and that's why training is so important, and consistency is so important in our system, and that everyone receive the same information and understand what to do and how to respond.
I was interested to see the STARS students taking a right stand. I can remember 15, 20 years ago, he was a principal with some of that training in this room here. Roger Dinwiddie started that program. Rutherford County started using it. But within the last 2 to 3 weeks, I have seen, I believe it was in the News Journal, because they care a lot of Gannett's things. He's in Nashville. He wrote a whole article in there about it. There was a section on that. So we've used them for a long time. His son, some others are kind of taking some of it over, but he's still writing and still involved in it.
And they still offer trainings when we receive information from the state once a month, and different trainings are offered, and we send different people to those trainings, whoever is applicable for that particular one. And they still do a large number of trainings for the state in that capacity.
And I would think a heightened awareness, not only by the administration, but also by the classroom teachers, that they're able to observe things that probably no one else would notice.
That is correct.
And having them fully trained and on board with this, I think, solves a lot of those issues, or at least I hope it does.
Well, we do too. And again, our school counselors are just vital to this whole process, because they're the ones that respond to the teachers in most cases on that first response. and host a lot of trainings for us at the school level.
Your elementary counselors are the one that carry a lot of this ball early on, as they, part of their schedule is because you're not advising a student on a college or something like that. There's some of this that you had on one of your other slides about what they covered, what type of curriculum topics that were covered. They go from classroom to classroom. They also do special sessions on grief counseling, you know, for family issues or something like that, or maybe families that are breaking up. They do special sessions with smaller groups of students and all these sort of things. So they're absolutely critical, especially during those formative years. And they follow that state curriculum. It's written out by grade and the topics that you cover.
I would think if our students understand early in elementary school that bullying is not going to be tolerated, that they already understand the program by the time they get into middle school and high school.
That's the intent, just to train early and then be consistent with that training all the way through.
Outstanding presentation. Thank you, Ms. Barnes. Board members, anything? Thank you so much. Number 9.
Number 9 is facilities, and this is some of the walking tracks for various schools. Laverne Middle School, Rock Springs Middle School, Smyrna Elementary School, Smyrna Middle School, and Whitworth Buchanan Middle School have requested concrete walking tracks through grants received by Ms. Jenna Stitzel, Coordinator School Health. The tracks will be 400 meters in length and constructed of concrete. Letters from the principals requesting permission for the construction of tracks at these schools and sketches of proposed track locations are prepared by the Engineering and Construction Department and are presented. Ms. Stitzel plans to have these tracks constructed as the funds become available with supervision from Engineering and Construction Department. Individual bids will be presented to the board for approval in future consent agendas. Recommend approval. The motion is to approve construction of 400-meter concrete walking tracks at Laverne Middle School, Rock Springs Middle School, Smyrna Elementary School, Smyrna Middle School, and Whitworth Buchanan Middle School at no cost to the board. And I think this, we've brought this up before. We may have new people listening to us tonight, but early on we kind of connected with the concrete program at MTSU. Is this still the pervious concrete tracks they use in most of those too?
For some particular reason, Ms. Stitzel has moved over to the just a standard concrete now.
Okay.
So I think it's a more reasonable cost, and her money goes farther.
Last longer?
Yeah. So that's what we're doing now.
Okay.
I learned that word here because that, what was it, pervious? Is that, I did not know what that
That's
meant
correct.
until we had a board meeting. It's amazing to have all these tracks going in, to have the opportunity for our students to not only outdoors, but to get some exercise.
I'm also, by this position on the county health board, we actually met this week and all, and from time to time you will see the mayors will have a walk, or they'll be on a Saturday or something like that, and the mayor will go walk, and very often now these walks are at our schools because you got these tracks now in place, and so you may see them in Laverne or Smyrna or somewhere around this area and other parts of the county. So it's not just school time. Even some of the principals and I'll say they see people walking late afternoon and night to get their time in. They come and walk. But I do know the county health department, along with the mayor and all, is also promoting the use of these for healthier Rutherford County.
Have the Cancer Society or the Heart Associations, have they used any of our walking tracks? I know they've used some of our high school tracks for some of these programs, but
I don't know for sure right off.
okay, that would make
Usually theirs is a fundraiser, and you may have several hundred people. So they've been going more frequently, I think, to Middle Tennessee, St. Thomas, Middle Tennessee Medical Center here, so you can handle 200 and 300 people, and these tracks are not designed for that.
Number 10, anything, Ms. Barnes? 26, okay. All right. She hasn't sent out an agenda, I don't believe, has she? Okay. All right, thank you. I do plan to attend, so. I do plan to attend, so.
You know, this insurance is becoming to be one of our recruiting tools. Just might mention this, if we have some people that's interested in teaching, because like in family coverage with Rutherford County, families about 275 something a month or so, and like in the city, it's like 700 or something. So it's huge difference in the year. So it's one of the things that we use now as a benefit. If you'll do the math, you know, and look at the salary and all the benefits too, it's beneficial to help us recruit some of the best we can get.
Mr. Chairman, number 11, anything to report? I have heard, Mr. Chairman, that the vouchers and the for-profit charters are going to come back with a renewed vigor this next legislative year. So I hope that we'll be able to combat with some vigor.
Round 6, round 7, whatever it is.
Yes, sir.
As many rounds they want to.
Yes, sir. Will continue to be a fight, I guess. Mr. Holliday, anything to report from the federal level?
The director shared with me the comments made on the floor of the Senate by our Senator Alexander, and it was a speech that he addressed the first effort from the Department of Education in order to interpret the education or the Elementary and Secondary Schools Act, Every Student Succeeds Act, and put it into regulation. His comments were scathing because the Department of Education is drunk with their own power. From years of having the authority to negotiate individual waivers with each state in the absence of this legislation, now that the legislation is in place, they simply have ignored it. And Senator Alexander pointed that out. If you'll be kind enough this evening, because we're a little more flexible with time than we are tomorrow night, I got to read you some parts of this. Because in the law we took the extraordinary steps, we in Congress, who under Article 1 of the Constitution are elected to write laws, we wrote prohibitions into the law. For example, in the law is a specific provision that said the U.S. Department of Education may not tell Tennessee or Pennsylvania or any other state what its academic standards must be. Specifically, it may not tell it that it must adopt Common Core. That's in the law. That's a specific prohibition in the law. The law that they're interpreting, the part of the elementary and or the Every Student Succeeds Act, has to do with Title I funds. And the Department of Education is concerned about parity in these Title I funds, that every school has equitable opportunities. So where the federal government steps in, local taxpayers have to equalize that elsewhere. Senator Alexander says this new proposed rule would cost $3.9 billion just for the 69 urban school systems to eliminate the difference in spending between the schools. In Rutherford County, we're talking about the more than $1,000 per student less than the state average that we educate in Rutherford County because we're efficient, because we make every dollar count, because we have a flat pyramid, all of those things that we take pride in. This would be an interpretation from the Department of Education that says, forget all of that. We want to see the bottom line dollar equal across the board. And it's just not in the law. That's not what the law asks for. So he goes on and says that means the state should ask for a hearing when this recommendation comes down from the Department of Education, the response from the state, he suggests, that means the state should ask for a hearing, and if the department persists, then the state should go to court and sue the Department of Education. We have something called the Congressional Review Act. It only takes 51 of us to overturn a final rule that we believe is not consistent with the law. We can do that. I will be at the head of the line in trying to do it. And we have an appropriations process, and the U.S. Department of Education has to come before us and be accountable to us for all the money that they receive. So I expect from here out for those who write the rules to follow the law. I don't know that I expect the Department of Education to follow the law, but I will be expecting Senator Alexander to use the authority that he has and very likely move in the direction of eliminating the Department of Education, because they are showing themselves as being a hindrance to education as opposed to any kind of credit to education. Regardless of what federal dollars that they may have, their recent statements and policy interpretations are simply against the law.
When they were originally set up, Mr. Odom, the Department of Education, it was more of a
It was kind of a clearinghouse for best practices in education, for curriculum and strategies and things like that to be shared to improve education, public education all over the United States. And it's kind of morphed into an enforcement agency of the executive board since your Secretary of Education is appointed by the executive branch. It now is turned into that, and it was under No Child Left Behind under the Bush administration. It was the enforcement agency for that, and that's continued. Actually, before him, it's continued. So we get dear colleague letters, and that's what it is. It's enforcement things, and I just do not read or see very much from them anymore about best practices or things like that. And so it makes me think if an agency has kind of lost its mission and is not fulfilling what it was originally and created for, do we still need it? I'll leave it at that.
Well said. Mr. Holliday, thank you so much. Excuse me. Okay, we'll move on to general discussion. Mr. Young, I think you had an issue that you wanted to talk about.
Meeting area unit over there in the auditorium, and just look at that and see if there's something needs to be done there, and if there is a cost associated with that. I'll get back to the board, let us know what it costs to get that system up and going.
Okay. I'm aware of an issue there.
Is Mr. Odom thinks it's a two-pipe system?
He said it was a two-pipe.
Two-pipe. And that means that when it gets cold, you turn the heat on and the heat stays on. And when it gets warm, you turn the air conditioning, and it doesn't matter if it drops down to 37 degrees on Sunday morning in the middle of May, the air conditioning is on. Is that basically correct? Okay.
You might share with them some other work that you're doing, looking at LED lighting and that sort of stuff, just kind of a quick, broad overview, some things we're doing.
If you recall, on a process that's now requiring $2.2 million for the balance of our controls, digital controls for the schools that don't have them, so that we can manage the energy usage and the building temperature from one central location over here. My changing to LED. As you recall, we had a project about 8 or 9 years ago that is now, has been paid for. It is when we changed out the old fluorescent lighting to energy efficient lighting. Now we're in the next generation of lighting that will save even more money. So, we've done so much over the last few years for energy efficiency that changing these lightings out, the lighting out will, put us on the top cutting edge of things, with these LED lights. And as, chillers and boilers fail, we replace those with very energy efficient systems. So, we're getting on the top of that, and this will be another step. We think that Energy Efficiency School Initiative will make some more funds available in the fall that might either fund this in, totality, or at least give us a good chunk of that money to do this LED change-out project.
The savings would be estimated to be, in comparison to the old lighting to the new LED.
Well, I don't know what the savings will be at this point. That's what we're studying right now. Of course, if we had upgraded from the old lighting that we had to LED, of course, there'd be a greater jump in savings, but we've already taken a step there in the middle.
Yes, sir.
And, now we'll step, so it wouldn't be as great if we changed the original ones out, but, we'll all come back with a report on that, once we get all that information and have the savings calculated.
We have a few more schools in the last 8 years too, so.
That's right, we have 46 schools and these two buildings on this piece of property, which will make a total of 48 buildings. And that will not, we're not including the John Coleman old school. And, the John Coleman new school, we don't have the funds in that budget to move up to the LED in that, so we'll have to pick that up at some other point.
Yes, sir.
I asked Mr. Carty, what does LED add to a building or something like that? And your estimate was about, to add to, if we're building a new building, to upgrade from fluorescent to LED.
400,000.
That's, but you know, the LED is so much more energy efficient even than fluorescent, plus the number of years that it lasts, again, is multiple times that too. So that's where it's going, in the home and in the business. And how about these in here? What is this?
Yes, these are the tubes that we installed in here. They, as you can see, they give out a great light. And, you can usually drop at least half of the wattage. In other words, if you're using 100 watts, you can go down to 50 watt and get the same amount of light. So it's quite a bit of kilowatt savings when you get into those.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clardy. Of course, we have several graduations from starting tomorrow night through Sunday, and I see that we're going to be present and accounted for in attending and celebrating with our students and their families. So, Ms. Joyce, thank you for putting together this list. So, Mr. Odom, do you have anything else?
No, sir.
Anybody else? Mr. Holliday?
I have two items. I'm gonna end with a positive, so I'll deal with the negative first. We have heard, many board members have heard from constituents and people in the public about restroom facilities, and I am proud to say that this is not a topic that is catching this board off guard. This is not a topic that this board is unfamiliar with. I did a little bit of study back. In July of 2012, we were talking about the language and the issues of these type of restroom facilities and the implications. In September of 2013, I had record of emails. November of 2013 in policy meeting. February of 2014, again, we were looking at language about these things. May of 2014, we examined that language again. In 2015, we watched the state of Kentucky as they debated legislation on this issue, and we discussed that here in our boardroom. And all along the way, in 2014, 2015, and 2016, at the National School Board Conference, I've seen fellow board members in forums and discussions as we continued to examine this issue to make sure that we were both reflecting our community's values into the national discussion and also being aware of exactly what was occurring around the nation. This board is absolutely familiar with the topics that are of concern to our constituents and to our families. And as we've had those conversations, the conversation that I've come away with, what I've taken away from it is that it is poor stewardship for the Rutherford County school system to pick a fight, because it would then be incumbent on the constituents of Rutherford County to pay for the legal battle that comes with it. And so repeatedly in all of those conversations, we have said we sure do expect that our state legislature will step up and do their job to support us, to give us clear guidelines that we then can follow in the school system, because that's where the Attorney General is in place for the state of Tennessee to be able to defend whatever would come from those discussions. I just want to highlight we've been on the job and we've been on that task, and it is it's important that we continue to be vocal about that. We need specific legislation in the state of Tennessee that answers the question of bathrooms and locker room facilities for K through 12 under 18 citizens. And we don't need to go beyond that. We need to decide that issue and then move forward. That's a comment that I just felt compelled, because time after time after time I've spoken to that issue, and I felt like I had to say something with the recent news reports. On a brighter note, I had the pleasure of attending the band formal for the Stewart's Creek High School band, and I was absolutely amazed at the number of times that the directors and the students made reference to their servant leadership. When they speak of leadership in the Stewart's Creek High School band, they speak of it only as their servant leadership to one another. I watched the color guard recognize their color guard instructor, and they said, "We're not always nice to one another, but we're trying, because our color guard instructor wants us to be good young ladies, and she's trying to teach us that in addition to how to flip a flag." I was just so impressed by that organization and the character underlying the arts lessons that were going on. I wanted to raise that to the board's attention. I thought it was exceptional.
Thank you, Mr. Holliday. I also would like to compliment you and Ms. Moore on the committee meeting for the Fine Arts Coordinator last night. Yeah, I thought the agenda was well thought out. The committee members were excited about the topic. Mr. Odom and I also attended from afar, and but I thought the comments were well taken, and great job as chairman, and again, Ms. Moore, excellent input. And board members, it was televised, so if you would like to go back and watch it, you can go to RCTV or YouTube, either or. So Anybody have anything else? We will be back tomorrow at 4:30. Do we need to say that one more time, Ms.? 4:30, graduations start at 7, except for Saturday and Sunday. There's 3 on Saturday and 2 on Sunday, and there's 3 at the same time on Friday, so we've had to pick and choose, and board members, thank you for attending. Mr. Odom, you're involved too, and thank you for attending all these graduations. After working all day too, we're grateful to have you there too. So, okay. Anybody else? All right. See you back here tomorrow at 4:30. We stand adjourned.